And we continue to follow the events across Israel this morning as today marks 2 years since Hamas militants stormed into southern Israel, killing 1,200 people and taking more than 200 hostages. Thousands of Israelis gathered at memorial sites today, including the Nova Music Festival, where almost 400 people died. Scripps News international correspondent Blake Sifton is in Tel Aviv for us. And Blake, how is the second anniversary of those October 7th attacks and the beginning of the war there? How's it being felt by Israelis and Palestinians alike?
Good morning, Holly. Because these talks are underway, and for the first time, an end to the war could be on the horizon, while there's sadness, there's also a great deal of hope. However, it's mixed with anxiety. We, of course, have had 2 ceasefires that have broken down in the past and the war renewed, and we've had multiple rounds of ceasefire talks that looked hopeful, and a deal appeared to be in sight, only for it to evaporate. Now, in addition to that, most people, when you speak to them, honestly can't believe that 2 years on, the war is still raging. I was here on October 7th, and I woke up at 6:30 in the morning to the first rocket sirens, and I stood on this balcony, and I watched the rockets being intercepted over Tel Aviv. And at the time, I never could have imagined that 2 years on, the war would still be raging. Now, of course, in Gaza, local health officials say 67,000 people have been killed, including 18,000 children. Everyone in Gaza knows multiple people who have died in this war. Most people have been displaced many times, multiple times, and many people are, of course, now living in tents, and neighborhoods that people knew, entire neighborhoods, have now been reduced to rubble. In Israel, the memory and the experience of October 7th is very much an open wound, and many people say that it won't heal until all remaining hostages are brought back from Gaza. Of course, we also need to remember that this is the longest war Israel has ever fought, and hundreds of thousands of soldiers and reservists have served hundreds of days in both Gaza and Lebanon. There's widespread reports of burnout, of PTSD, and there has been increasing rates of suicide amongst soldiers and reservists. Israelis are also well aware of how diplomatically isolated they've become and how badly their reputation has been damaged internationally. And politically, they are very divided. A poll was released just the other day in which 64% of Israelis said that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu should take responsibility for the failures that led to October 7th and should resign. But of course, he does still enjoy substantial support amongst many in Israel.
And Blake, I want to turn to those talks as they continue in Egypt. Is there any sign of progress at those talks, and what are the challenges they're facing at this point, just day 2?
Well, the first day of the talks yesterday, we're told, ended on a positive note. We understand that mediators have had the negotiators from Hamas and from Israel work on a roadmap for how these talks can progress, and we understand that the second day of the talks is underway now in Sharm el-Sheikh. Now, obviously, President Trump has expressed quite a bit of enthusiasm and optimism about the likelihood of a deal happening, and we understand that the negotiators are working really on the cessation of hostilities, on the logistics of a ceasefire, because that's the first thing that needs to happen before anything else can move forward. And they're also talking about the names of the Palestinian prisoners who would be released for Israeli hostages. This, according to the proposal, is the release of some 250 security prisoners that are serving life sentences in Israeli jails that would be released. Now, Hamas reportedly wants high-profile prisoners. They want the kind of prisoners that Israel believes are the most notorious and that Israel is the most reluctant to release. So that is a major obstacle to overcome. Also, the withdrawal of Israeli forces ahead of this exchange of hostages for prisoners is another major issue. Hamas is apparently pushing for Israeli forces to withdraw to the lines they held in January during the last ceasefire, when they did not hold most Palestinian population centers. But according to the proposal as it's written, Israel would remain in the lines they held until August, where they were in control of most Palestinian population centers. And of course, the other major issue, really the elephant in the room, is the issue of Hamas disarming and Gaza being demilitarized. When Hamas sent their response to President Trump's proposal, a response that was viewed as positive and that led President Trump to say Hamas was ready for peace, they made no mention of disarming. And that has been a red line for them. And other than the hostages, it's Israel's other major demand. So that is a major stumbling block to be overcome.
All right, Scripps News international correspondent Blake Sifton in Tel Aviv with that update. Thank you, Blake. We will check in with you as these talks progress.